Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and thank you so much for joining us for this A4Q Congress second edition live broadcast. My name is Debbie Archer, and I'm delighted to have with me Ekaterina Irina Manole, who is going to talk about the Agile approach in business analysis. Irina, we call her Irina, has significant years of experience in IT, from a developer to QA, and also product owner and agile coach. So she's going to talk rather than present, so listen. And please pop your questions into the comments box, and she will answer them at the end of the session. I'm going to pass over to Irina now and sit back and enjoy. Thank you, Irina.
Thank you also, Debbie. Good afternoon, good evening from my side also. Today I've chosen to speak a bit and not to present the agile approach in business analysis, since it's a subject with which I'm pretty fond of. I really wanted to bring my own personal note, let's say, on it. So I would rather talk about it this time. Now, in order to depict better the agile approach in business analysis, I would like to drive you in a scenario where the BA role can be emphasized. Now, the scenario goes around a new business, a new contract, let's say, that is started between a provider and a customer. One of the first steps into starting such a journey is business analysis. So the process of analyzing the business advances at the provider side by going deeper into the organization until it reaches the production teams, while at the customer side, it advances deeper and deeper into the needs that have to be covered and broke down and until they reach the point of an action expected by the customer from the product part of view. And this action should be really clear. Now, basically, on the provider side, the story goes from business owners to business representatives, and then to product owner or owners, to the team, which in case of Agile and in case of IT would have a Scrum Master, would have maybe a team lead or a coach, would have developers and QAs. On the other side, at the customer side, we will have at first the big picture needs, then even more big picture needs, and then it will start to break down in smaller needs, then more refined needs, until the expected actions that I was mentioning before would be clear. Now, putting the focus on the people involved at each level in the business and their interaction, putting the focus on the product value, on customer collaboration, and responding to each change as fast as possible, each change request, as fast as possible. It all starts to take the agile flavor. And in this kind of context, in order to bring the customer needs at the level of being implemented by the provider's teams, the requirements have to be communicated. They also have to be clarified in the beginning, but also along the way, as the requests or the needs are changed and clarified, and they also have to be refined. Then also at the provider side, depending on the business requirements, some improvements have to be cared for along the way and analyzed at the organizational level, thinking of the system level, process level, and enterprise level, depending on which changes would be needed. Now, having in an agile context, having the PO caring for the customer side with the customer needs, with the product value, with the market positioning, there is also need for a person to care for the requirements and the team side, with the story decomposition, with the breakdown, with clarifications, and the organization of the improvements and also the carry on of the improvements. Thus, the work of the business analyst also has to be mapped or has to be adapted to the agile approach as well. So in order to do this, we think of a person that would take the role of a BA and try to think who would best fit to such a role and what abilities, what competencies should such a BA have. And we think also at the business analysts that were not, let's say, formed in an agile environment, but their competencies back then were already in place. So basically the BA role was always expected to be agile in their way of thinking, in their way of acting, and by their job description. So not really much new was said so far about the business analysis and the responsibilities of a BA in case of an agile environment. Because a person that analyzes the business has to be a person that, first of all, accepts the change, no matter when it arrives. A person that is flexible and creative, that can harmonically blend responsiveness with innovative thinking, while enjoying creating the needed interactions between the needed individuals. All these are still valid even in an agile environment. So actually, regardless of the organizational methodology, a BA should be this kind of person. So then, what knowledge should a BA have to fit or to be involved in an agile process in order to help the team and the business? How is business analysis conducted in an agile organization? As mentioned a bit earlier, in this kind of context, in order to bring the customer needs at the level of being implemented by the providers team, the requirements have to be communicated, clarified along the way, and refined. And also, the improvements have to be cared for along the way and analyzed at each organizational level: system, process, and enterprise. So these activities will go along the agile process in the company and will have 4 main drivers, which are usually in different materials. They are depicted in a triangle form. And these 4 main drivers are the scheduled time, the resources and the cost, the quality. These all 3 are fixed. And the 4th one is the scope, which in case of agile is a variable driver. So these 4 drivers or constraints depict better the environment, the context in which a BA will now go swim in an agile environment. And then we have the agile process with all its phases. Now, as I mentioned, the scope was variable, and that is directly influenced by customer needs, by the production power, on how often changes appear and when should they be accepted. And it relies in the BA responsibility to have the scope clear at each point. This meaning clarifications are needed. So the needs need to be clarified. The requirements, analysis of the business impact of the risks have to be done. And what else needs to be done in order to have to have the scope fulfilled. Also, if any improvements in either of the three organizational level, system, process, or enterprise appear along the way, the BA should care about those, drive them, and even try to put them best in place. Now, thinking at the Agile generic process, at each phase of this process, the BA has an important word to say, and does this thing best by using appropriate Agile techniques. Even more, the Agile techniques in business analysis fits very well at each organizational level. So, for example, if we think at the enterprise level and we want to analyze this level to see the strengths and the weaknesses of the business, to find improvement points, or how best we can leverage the business. One of the Agile techniques that would fit in this case is business capability technique. It's a technique that indeed helps the BA to make the analysis over the business at the enterprise level, bringing out exactly as mentioned, the risks of the business, the strengths, the weaknesses, and improvement points. Going at the process level, or thinking if we need to analyze the bigger project, the bigger picture of a project. This being important at the beginning of any project, then the appropriate techniques, Agile techniques, would be personas and value stream mapping. These two will definitely support the BA in order to obtain the needed infos. In order to clarify what's valuable, because it's another very important thing in Agile to know what is of value for the customer. One of the techniques that can be suggested is the business value definition technique. This can be easily used. Also, another example would be the Moscow technique. Another thing that helps a lot in clarifying the value is the backlog management. So, as you can see, for each level, there are these techniques that really support the BA, the business overall, and the team in order to obtain all the needed info that support the implementation and the production. Well, last but not least, in the Agile process, it is of utmost importance to avoid waste. Because waste creates slowdowns, create blockage points, either in the team, either on the customer side, either on the provider side. So trying to avoid waste definitely impacts the activity of a BA as we know it outside of an Agile context. And that is also because one of the techniques used mostly for avoiding waste is lightweight documentation. Generally, a BA prepares the documentation with the requirements for the system. And when we think now of lightweight documentation, basically the responsibility of the BA, or better said, the attitude of the BA over these kind of written requirements has to be different. Basically, the documentation now has to be enough for this moment. And what everybody has to agree with regards to the documentation is that it's clear enough for the moment, and it's prone to change at any point. So then the BA should be prepared, first of all, to just do as much documentation as needed for the moment. to be prepared to create new documentation at any moment of the project, and to refine it or even change it along to the customer needs. Now, all these techniques and the way they are used in an agile process are grouped in a set of 7 principles that offer a useful way of thinking about the BA approach to agile work. These 7 principles are: first, see the whole. So we all know that it is very important for a business analyst to have the bigger picture. Now, see the whole principle relates to the ability to attend to development detail while maintaining awareness of relevant higher level issues such as marketplace, competition, enterprise objectives, strategy, and processes. The second principle would be think as a customer. In this principle is a key component of the Agile business analysis, because the analysis starts by understanding the customer, clarifying the customer goals, and at a high level view, then take these and decompose them down to a detailed view of the specific needs that the product must meet. Another principle, the third one, is analyze to determine what is valuable. About this principle, I would say that all the work initiated in an organization should increase or protect the value of the organization. So if it doesn't, it's a clear waste of money, time, and effort. So as you could see, we have one principle that follows thinking as a customer and somehow protects the customer goals or emphasizes the customer. And then we have the third principle, which takes care of the value of the organization. That is also a very important thing. Going deeper into creating or into the project generally, we think about getting real using examples. This one is another principle that suggests using real customer examples in order to express and validate the product needs. Behavior-driven development proposes a formal way to express the product needs as concrete examples, thus giving the stakeholders and the project team members the possibility to communicate directly on this. Choosing behavior-driven development indeed supports and clarifies, also keeps the teams and the individuals with the focus onto the real customer needs. The fifth principle, which is part of this approach of the business analysis in agile context, is understanding what is doable. It is very important before starting the business to understand what is doable from what the customer requests and what is definitely not doable. So one suggestion would be to use the real option analysis, which is an investment tool that encourages the consideration of alternatives and choices that will become available as details as the investment emerge. So business cases are typically created by identifying costs and benefits and calculating the return of investment. So this mechanism is used to decide whether to commit money to the initiative as a whole or not. Sixth principle will be stimulate collaboration and continuous improvement. Now, the Agile environment is recognized for intense collaboration of the team members, for feedback, for continuous improvement, and for early feedback. And in order to receive early feedback so that the product can be fast and easily adapted to the customer needs, an environment ready for communication and feedback is desired. This will lead to continuous improvement and leads to growing value towards the customer faster. So this kind of environment can be nurtured by using different techniques like retrospectives and collaborative games. Sorry. And we've reached now again the seventh principle, which I've already mentioned a bit before, related to avoiding waste. As mentioned, it is very important to avoid waste due to the fact that it creates blockages and slows down the process. So eliminating waste is at the heart of the Lean philosophy. Basically, any activity that the customer would not expect to pay for in the product price should be considered waste. So waste basically increases the costs and reduces the profit. It is anything that doesn't add value to the end product. Clearly, there are exceptions, perhaps, for example, regulatory compliances or audit requirements. But Lean organizations seek to minimize the effort expended on such issues. So, as mentioned here, for avoiding the waste, an important thing would be lightweight documentation, and is a major point for a BA to adjust its activity. I really wanted to tell you about these 7 principles and how each technique or how the agile techniques map each of these principles in order to better clarify which is the business analysis approach in an agile environment. And I really hope I've tried to create a proper context with my storytelling today. And if you have any questions, I'm here to listen.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you ever so much. A lot of information there. Thank you. We do have a couple of questions. I think the first one that will come up is, Andrea, here we go. As a QA, what is the main difference that the Agile team have that will influence my role? So as a QA, working in an Agile team, how's my role influenced?
In an Agile environment, if we work or when we have a scope defined and maybe thinking of a Scrum approach, we will have iterations defined. For each iteration, the team, which is composed of developers and QAs, also the Scrum Master and the product owner, will have to reach the end of the iteration having items from the backlog closed. This would mean the items should be both developed and tested by the end of an iteration. So what I think mostly influences a QA job is the fact that requirements have to be clarified when they enter the sprint, so that both development and QA work can start. Development by developing, and QA by analyzing the requirements, making TC design, or even if test-driven development is used, then already the test can be done in advance. And by the end of the iteration, so that an item can be considered as closed, both development and testing should be closed. This is what I consider it would most affect the QA work.
Thank you. Thank you, Thimini, for the question. So follow on to that about roles. Do we need both the PO and the BA role in an agile environment, and how do the two roles separate and blend?
Okay, yeah, indeed. In most articles or how the agile methodology is defined, the PO role is defined and takes up the responsibilities that care for the customer side, for for the needs of the customer, for the value of the product. But then there is also need of a BA who would take the requirements that come from the customer side through the PO and tries to clarify them and brings them into the team. The BA is the person that would care for these requirements to be correctly implemented. Usually, the BA would be actually sort of a proxy product owner in an agile settlement. And indeed, if it's not a very clear line where the two roles separate, but I think it's better this way because each organization can map its structure on the needs of the organization and see which responsibilities would rely to the PO and which to the BA in order for the whole process and for the value to be produced as fast as possible.
Thank you. Thank you. What do you see as the main challenges? I'm a BA working in a hybrid environment, so somebody partially working in agile projects, some not quite so agile in effect. Some thoughts on that, perhaps?
Yes. Well, in hybrid environments, it would mean that some part of the process would be agile, would use the agile methodology, and some part of the development process would not use that. It is indeed a challenge because you as a BA, you already know the agile techniques that would support you driving some of the topics faster. But I think it's hard to use them in the hybrid environment or in the part where the traditional methodology is used, because people are not using the mindset. Maybe they know the mindset, but they are not using the agile mindset. And also, it might be that the outcomes of the techniques used will not really fit to what is needed in the traditional process. So then you should really stick to keeping the agile techniques there, or find a way, of course, to adapt them for the traditional one. I think that's best to do.
And adapting those techniques for a more traditional environment, could you give perhaps some hints there that might be useful to people?
I think that, for example, any hints for adapting would be, for example, the collaborative games. I'm thinking of those. I think that no matter the methodology, the communication in a team should be at a high level. And then I think these kind of games are useful in either of the methodologies. Even if you adapt them in the traditional methodology, you will not have a retrospective where to go for the collaborative games. But then you create as a BA meeting that is not part of any process, maybe, and take the time to have a collaborative game. That would be one example of adapting.
Thank you. Skills acquisition training. I know that A4Q launched the Certified Agile BA A4Q IQB BA product this week. If you were looking at developing skills, do you think certification has value as a BA?
Yes, I think so. The certification is not only the exam and is not only the paper, it's the knowledge that is behind it. And learning as a BA all the techniques that you need to know in an agile environment, understanding better which are the roles in such an environment, and how you can fit there, or how you can find your way, and most important, where are you the key person and which is the value that you bring in a team. I think it is of utmost importance. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think we have no more questions at the moment. So, Irina, I'm going to say a huge thank you. Are you coming to Oktoberfest later, Irina?
Yes, sure. You can find me there. Hope to meet you.
Yeah, so please, if anybody has some thoughts, then come along to Oktoberfest. And I know that Irina will be more than delighted to share some ideas and some insights and tips and what have you. So thank you again. And thank you to everybody who joined and listened. And we'll see you in the next session and hopefully at Oktoberfest later.
Yeah. Thank you also.
Bye. Bye.
This 27th of October, we wait for you to celebrate Oktoberfest in our gather town. For sure, it will be a very entertaining event with live music, with A4Q staff, and of course, all of you. Don't miss our A4Q Oktoberfest. It will be very fun. Prost!